Hi, everybody. I'm James Zipadelli. I've been traveling with my father for over 20 years. In this video, these are the top 5 things I learned while I was in the Philippines. We were in the Philippines for 25 days. If you like this video or want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel at JZipadelli. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at JZipadelli. I look forward to seeing you on the channel. Have a great day. Whether you're planning your first trip to the Philippines or this is uh, more than one trip, make sure that you bring enough pesos for your trip. Bring enough cash. The Philippines is a cash based society. You can still bring your credit cards for some hotels and some restaurants that you stay in while you're in the Philippines, but for the most part, the Philippines is a cash based society. So make sure you bring enough cash either before you get to the Philippines or after you get to the Philippines. Make sure you know where the nearest ATM is. You can have like BDO, for example, or another. Uh, there are ATMs also in some major hotels like the Hotel Belmont in Macton. Before you go to the Philippines for the first time, make sure that your ATM does not charge you for foreign transaction fees. In my case, I have Bank of America as my primary bank in the US. Did you know that Bank of America charges 3% every time you use your ATM card? I didn't know that. You're going to want to open up a separate account so that you don't have to worry about foreign transaction fees. So I would recommend using a bank such as Charles Schwab Bank or Capital One, neither of which charge anything for foreign transaction fees. So you booked that dream vacation to the Philippines. There's only one problem. You don't have a hotel booked. That's okay, you think. I'll just book it when I get there. That is a bad idea, folks. Whenever possible, book your hotels, the ferry, and your flights far in advance of your trip. Take it from me, if you're booking directly with the hotel, or you're booking an Airbnb, or through a third party app like I did, such as Agoda.com, or Priceline, or Expedia, or Trivago, or Booking. The further in advance you book your hotel, the more likely it is that you'll get the room. Now, sometimes you'll get a notification like through Agoda.com saying that there's the last room available. Sometimes I got the room and sometimes I didn't. Now, if you don't get the room, your credit card is not supposed to be charged. But even sometimes the apps make a mistake and you'll have to go back and correct it later. The same is true even for the ferry. Now, the Philippines operates two ferries. One is called Supercat and one is called Ocean Jet. When we were on a tour in Cebu, my father had the foresight to ask to go to the port where the Ocean Jet office was located because we needed an extra ticket on the ferry to the island of Bohol. As it turns out, he was lucky he went that day because had he booked the morning of, the ferry was supposed to depart, the ferry would have been sold out. So make sure you check in advance the OceanJet and Supercat website so that you know whether the ferry is going or not, or there could be some bad weather. And finally, and this goes without saying, when possible, book your flights far in advance. If there's an economy flex that allows you to rebook without a charge, even better. I used trip.com, which has something called Trip Guarantee. Trip Guarantee means that if your flight gets canceled for any reason, they'll book you on the next available flight. Also, a lot of times the flights are not direct depending on the island that you go to. You might have to change in Manila and you might have to get your bags in Manila. So make sure that you book a flight all the way through. Otherwise, you may be scrambling through the Manila airport. The second most important thing, some might say the most important thing, that you should do before you plan a trip to the Philippines is to make sure your passport is valid. In order to travel in the Philippines, U.S. citizens need to have at least 6 months of validity. So, before my next trip to the Philippines later this year, I need to renew my passport. And I'm recording this video in July, so I'm going to give myself plenty of time to renew my passport before I make my return trip. Don't be like one of those people who panics a couple of weeks or a couple of days before you plan your trip to the Philippines. Now, there are some instances where if you need to travel within 2 weeks, that the State Department makes some special arrangements for people that are traveling immediately. But I wouldn't rely on something like that. I would either um, put your passport through the mail through a regular U.S. post office, or if you don't want to do that and it's your first time having a passport, I would make a in-person appointment at your local facility that accepts passports. Make sure that you make an account uh, on the State Department website and make sure that you have all the forms and all the requirements before you show up to your appointment. I have been very fortunate that over the last 20 years, I've been able to travel to some wonderful places, and the Philippines is no exception. The number one thing that I've learned that I could pass advice, hopefully, on to you is you will come in contact with a lot of Filipinos and some Filipinas. Be nice to them. Be respectful to them. Respect their country and their culture. They are trying to work as hard as they can so that we Americans, we Westerners, can have a wonderful time. If you decide to go out on a date with someone, make sure you are respectful to them. Make sure you are respectful of their time. Because honestly, Um, they could have chosen somebody else to meet, and they chose you. Remember that. And finally, whether it's in hotels, taxis, tours, flights, or anywhere else, it's the the Filipinos and Filipinas are hardworking people. They don't expect tips. Try to tip nicely. Tip as you would in the United States. In the United States, I usually tip for restaurants 20%. I oftentimes did that when I was on my trip to the Philippines. So I hope that this is helpful to you and happy traveling. I hope you have a great trip.